right, we are live. There's nobody here yet, so we're going to hang out for a few minutes. I'm going to open up some research while we're waiting to be joined by our first guest or two. And I am a few minutes early, so I expect people will probably be showing up in just a few minutes. And remember, today we are going to be talking about some crazy lawyer antics. We've got the attorneys down in Florida who feel that showing up to video conference court hearings in various states of undress is an appropriate way to act. The court in Florida tends to disagree with that. Can't say that I blame them. I mean, although I do want to know, because the article in Above the Law said that the judges are complaining one female attorney was in bed with under the covers and a male attorney was shirtless. I'm dying to know if they were in the same room, or if they were, in separate locations. But I could see that happening. I mean, there's a lot of casualness going on right now. And part of what we're going to look at for a future discussion is, has this time period changed our society to become a more casual one? Are we going to be less formal about things? And I think that's very possible. We might be more formal about personal spacing. America had always had more personal space than other areas of the world. So we might be more formal about personal spacing, but less formal about things like dress, and, might be comfortable, wearing a t-shirt instead of a polo when we're doing things. So in the Above the Law article, it points out that the judges were complaining that in Zoom hearings, the attorneys were dressing inappropriately and appearing inappropriately on camera. Lawyers in casual shirts and blouses, no concern for ill grooming. I guess my scruffiness would probably be inappropriate for that judge. And one male lawyer appeared shirtless, female attorney appeared still in bed, still under the covers. Again, that's kind of awesome. I still want to know if they were at the same hearing. Not as humorous as the eatable dicks attorney, but still quite humorous. So when we look at this and we look at that casualness, bear in mind that if your attorney has failed to bring a shirt to your hearing, he's probably not prepared the rest of your case either. So I would be a little concerned as the client in that situation. Where we are going with the orders for the whole quarantine thing, there are some pretty crazy quarantine stuff going on. And, the live conversations here, guys, this is for you. So feel free. You have a question, send it to us in the comments and we'll talk. We will go off topic for, pretty much anything. So the quarantine orders that we have are varied. Every community has a slightly different one. And I did a piece on this earlier this week. You can please go and take a look at it, where I think that it's time that we start standing up and pointing out that these orders are unconstitutional. Now, that doesn't mean that we go out and intend to violate the orders, or that law enforcement and people would be called upon to enforce them are evil people. I truly don't believe that. I do, however, think that the orders tend to be unconstitutional. They're overbroad, they're not narrowly tailored, and they have a tendency to infringe upon enumerated constitutional rights. So that presents a problem. A lot of them are also wildly unenforceable because they are not well written. So please bear that in mind, and let's not take a negative attitude towards law enforcement just because of that. Let's understand that, your police officers are people doing jobs just like everybody else. and they're going to do their job. They're going to do what their boss tells them to do, up to a point. Now the question is where is that point? What is it going to get to? And how far down the road are they going to go? Well, I know a lot of police officers, and they're not going to go and kick in somebody's door and grab their guns just because Bob owns 3 firearms and we have an order to go seize all the firearms from private individuals. At least in Missouri, they're not going to do that. They might get to the second house. They won't get to the third. So that's not going to happen. But when you look at gun control doesn't work that way. Gun control gives a reason. They say, we are going to take the guns away from people who are mentally unstable. And that's reasonable and logical, and there's a certain support for that. We don't want somebody who can't tell the difference between reality and voices in their head running around with a loaded firearm. I think that makes sense. But the flip side of that is, who is deciding what mental health is? Because it's not the doctors. And if it is a doctor, where are they going with that? Are we going to strip firearms away from everybody because they happen to serve in combat and have some level of PTSD? So no, there's got to be a better line. Now, why are we going down that path? It's because when we're talking about what police will enforce, if there's a reason to the law, police are going to enforce it. And the way you fight laws that are unjust and unpopular is politically. You challenge it in court. You challenge it at the ballot box. A friend of mine I went to high school with, we were on a swim team together. He's a police officer in Massachusetts. He told me one time, he was like, look, Pat, we can't lose on the street. And he's right. They can't. They'll keep bringing in additional help, even when they're wrong. And that will happen. So if you get into a fight with the cops over the constitutionality of something they're doing, you're going to lose and you're going to hurt your argument. So it may be unconstitutional, but don't pick a fight where you're not going to win. You're not going to change the police officer's mind on the street. You're not going to educate him on the street. That isn't going to happen. On the street, they're going to win. They'll bring in more and more and more police officers until they do. So don't do that, and don't put yourself in that situation. The place that you can win, the place that you can challenge unjust laws and unconstitutional laws is in the courtroom and at the ballot box. So if you're subject to an unjust law, you respond to it by either refusing without violence and getting arrested, so then we can take it up in criminal context, or we sue and we challenge the law in a civil context. Those are really the ways that you want to go about that. So I understand a lot of people think that the way that they want to respond is on the street. Don't do it. You're not going to win. Now, with these crazy quarantine laws that we have, okay, we are taking away people's right to assemble. We're taking away their freedom of speech. There was a police officer who recently said that protest was not essential. There's a governor that has said that the Second Amendment is not essential. Folks, this is a very slippery slope. Now, what's going to happen is there's a segment of the population who's going to agree with that. And they're going to say that, look, there's a pandemic going on. You don't have a need to go to the gun store, go to the firing range, or go do that. There's no need for that. That's not an essential activity. And you know what? The people saying that have no need of doing that. They don't care. They don't exercise that right. They didn't agree with you having that right in the first place. They don't agree with you exercising it now. It is an excuse. Okay? It's taking advantage of a situation. So don't go down the slippery slope. Okay? There's a gun store owner. He has defied the order. He is open, says he's an essential business because he serves law enforcement. I say he's an essential business because he is serving a fundamental right. Now, what's going to happen? At some point, he is going to probably get an order to close down directly, and he'll challenge that order directly. Or they'll ignore it because he serves law enforcement, and that's the excuse they need. And it won't give us a case that we can argue and challenge. In Missouri, there are communities that have ordered the shutdown of churches. Now, do I think that in the midst of the pandemic, you should go and join a room full of 150, 200 people, 500 or 1,000 people, or one of the super churches with several thousand congregants? Look, my church closed down. I was very sad that they did. They shut down the in-person services, and they're doing it online. So every Sunday morning, we sit and we watch Mass online. There's a difference between a church voluntarily complying with a request and the state ordering the doors closed. And even the order of no more than 10 people in a single space is ridiculous because we don't have a definition of what a single space is. There's no way to understand that. Is a single space the 6-foot diameter circle around an individual? Because that would be the social distancing limit. And you shouldn't have more than one person in that single space unless they're a family unit. If they're a family unit, then you can have, I don't know how many. So these are the orders that we have to do something about. Good morning, Tina. Good morning, Dale. We are largely riffing, so if you have a question, feel free, pop it in the comments. We're talking about some basic areas. We're talking about the attorneys that are showing up to video teleconference hearings like Zoom in various states of undress. The court also bagged on them for personal grooming. I guess, some of them are scruffy like I am. Look, it's Missouri. We ever get to the point where beards are unacceptable in Missouri, it's a vastly different place than it has been. We are also discussing some of the crazy laws and things that are coming out of the whole quarantine issues. Now, there's a lot of legal authority for quarantine orders and for isolation orders. But the people that are subject to the current orders, which are blanket orders, are not individually targeted to Bob. Those orders have problems. Those orders have serious problems. There are police departments that are getting information on who has a positive test from the health department, and they're sitting on their house. They're putting cars out there, they're sitting on their house, and they're watching them. Okay? And in the course of doing so, they're telling the entire community that there's something wrong with that guy right there. Okay, they're saying, we have to watch this person. They can't be trusted. Or that the person is a criminal. They are using the color of authority and the threat of violence to illegally confine that person to their home. That's actionable. And frankly, I think somebody should do it. So these police departments are doing that. They have the best of intentions, I hope. I hope they do. But they're crossing the line because they don't particularly care about your rights, about the constitutional rights citizens have. It has become a question of power. I can do it because I have the power. And they're overlooking that police power only stems from the authority of the state, and the authority of the state only stems from the consent of the governed. So when law enforcement is taking that kind of position, and I got to tell you, in a couple of communities, it actually came out of the civil side and the civilian leadership of police departments as opposed to the rank and file officers. So don't make the mistake of thinking that the rank and file officers agree with all the policies and laws that they're charged with enforcing. I've mentioned that a couple times in this. They aren't, and they don't. You know, your neighborhood cop is just like you. You know, they want to go home to their family. They care about their family. They do their job. They want to leave their job at the office when they go home. You know, they want to do other things. I've been fortunate enough to get to know a few police officers personally in my time working as a criminal defense attorney. And, you know, they're generally good people. Now, very few police officers are actually corrupt. Law enforcement, like law, lawyers, judges, and many professions, have such a high barrier to entry that you don't get the generally corrupt that make it through the entry process. Now, are there bad police officers? Yes. Are there bad lawyers? Yes. We read about them all the time. They have their law license stripped. Some of them go to prison. Are there bad judges? Of course. But again, as you get up that level, no, and yeah, you're right, Hippie. The police do not want to deal with some of these stupid quarantine orders. They don't like it. They don't want to deal with it. Everybody's unhappy. And frankly, if the quarantine order is justified, it puts them at risk to send them out to do it. I got to tell you, I don't know what town everybody's in, or even if you're all in Missouri, but take a look at the police officers that are out there still working. They do not have proper protective equipment. Okay? They're not being equipped with proper masks. They're not being equipped with proper protective clothing. And even if they were, that stuff would be insanely hot to wear all day long. Davis County. Well, yeah, your guys aren't equipped with much of anything there except attitudes, but we won't get into that. Hershey, Pennsylvania. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, Pennsylvania was one of the first lawsuits against the governor's order. There was a gun shop and other places that challenged the governor's order, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court shut that down. I think they're wrong, but it becomes an issue of, are they going to appeal that Supreme Court? And if they are, where are they gonna get the funds for that? One of the arguments was that the law firm that represented the people are, place here tickets, motorcyclists sitting at a gas station. Okay, I'm actually familiar with an incident. It might be the one you're talking about. That would be in Springfield, Missouri. There were a couple people that went out for rides individually, and then motorcyclists, being motorcyclists, when you see another one out, and you're just tooling along, sometimes you just group up and ride together. Chances are they were not violating the social distancing by being too close together while they were riding. Especially if they don't know each other. You don't ride that close to somebody you don't know, because you don't know how accurate and how fine control they have over their ride. But in that case, after riding, they stopped for gas, and they got gas, and they went in and they bought some food at a gas station. The gas station attendant yelled at them, screaming that if they didn't leave the property, she was going to call the cops. Now, I don't know exactly how many bikers there were in this group. I'm remembering several or 7, somewhere in that area. It was fewer than 10. And they left that property, and then they went to another property where they finished eating. And the police came and gave them a hard time. God, if I was in Springfield, I would take every one of those cases. I would love to. But it's a 5-hour drive each way. That's not practical. I'm certain that there will be attorneys in the city of Springfield that will love to challenge that silly shit, because that's what it is. Going out for a motorcycle ride, and for those of you that ride motorcycles, you understand this. It is almost Zen-like. It's very, very good for your mental health. Do you come to Davies? Occasionally. Not that often, just because it's a fairly long drive. It's about 2 hours or so. Really, the farthest out that direction that I have gone would be I've gone out to Trenton a couple of times. I haven't really gone past Trenton because it's just too much of a drive. And I spend all my time driving, and it becomes unbearably expensive for the client. But so they issued the tickets to these guys, and they cited them for violating the stay-at-home order. Now, the stay-at-home orders, and I haven't pulled up Springfield specifics order, but they have so many gaping loopholes that if you want to violate the order, you pretty much can. Right now, I'm on YouTube. If I wasn't an attorney, this would be a media exercise, in which case I can do it. I could walk down the street and hold my camera out, and I should be fine because it's media. So that's the order that's in our area, media and the governor's order. That's one of the things that's allowed. There are so many gaping loopholes, it's ridiculous. So if you're going out actually for food, that's one of the things that's allowed. Those guys going out for physical exercise, depending on what you ride, and Tina, your family used to ride motorcycles. I had my rice burners. I mean, when I was a kid, I rode fast. I had fast bikes. I had my Kawasaki's. And then as I got older, I shifted over to cruisers. But I'll tell you, those are big, heavy bikes. And riding a motorcycle is a physical activity. If you don't think so, go for a long ride. Go for a 500-mile ride. It will wear you out. You know what? I have never ridden one of the KLRs, but I love that bike. I have wanted one for years, and I haven't been able to find one that met my price range and its quality while I had the extra money. My wife is pretty anti motorcycle. Right after we got married, I'd gotten hit. I was riding my Vulcan, and I got hit and went down pretty hard. And she's been paranoid ever since. So right now I'm without a bike. But yeah, that's the KLR is something I'd really, really like to ride. Goldwing, Goldwing's full dress, man. The full dress bikes are pretty nice, but I like more of the cruisers. And the sport touring bikes are sweet too. But that's just it. The motorcycle culture has a bike for pretty much everyone. And whatever it is you're wanting to do, there's a bike. Married on a Vulcan Nomad. That is freaking awesome. There's a bike for almost anything you want to do. And one thing you can add, those of you who are on right now, your motorcycles, when you go out and you ride, even if you're riding with a group, it is a solitary experience. It's you, man. You're communing with the bike, with the wind, with the road. It's not while you're with a group, it's not truly a group activity. Now, when you stop, you talk a little bit. You enjoyed the fact that you had that shared experience, that you guys enjoyed the road together, and that's fine. But violating the stay-at-home order by going out for a ride on a motorcycle, I don't see it. I don't see how that's going to stand up. And surely there will be a attorney that is going to step up and help those people in Springfield. I'm positive there are enough attorneys in Springfield that there'll be a couple good ones that are willing to fight that crap. I'm looking for churches that want to fight these stay-at-home orders. That floors me that we haven't had more church challenges to those. We can allow people into Walmart based on square footage and number of people in the occupancy of the building. But we can't allow people into a church based on the square footage and occupancy of the building. That's a problem. And I think that that is an undefendable position by the state. Now, the order we had here in Kirksville, and I got to say, I'm rather proud of my city for doing it, was less restrictive in that, you can go to church, just maintain your social distancing and don't overfill the building. It was actually a much lesser restrictive order than we got from the governor, which would make that area kind of moot because the governor's order would control. But that's a good thing. And our city attempted to respect those First Amendment rights. Now, our city also countered that by saying that essential employees need to have a letter on letterhead from their employer that gives them permission to drive to work. Yeah, I found that to be rather ridiculous. And I have the letter that I wrote for my employees right here. Authorized work and travel papers. As per the City of Kirksville's order that people employed by essential businesses receive and carry on their person letters on letterhead to prove they are employed at an essential business, the letter provided declares my employee's essentialness. Due to the requirements being extremely scarily similar to that of the Stasi or Soviet Russia, and the City of Kirksville's failure to require that the letter be in English, I am providing the rest of this written verification in German and Russian. And then I did so. Well, actually, of course, you can't read that because it's backwards in the camera. That's weird. Sorry. And then I did so. I speak German. I lived in Germany for a few years, not well enough to translate this into German. So I use Google Translate, and I use Google Translate to translate to Russian because I'm an asshole like that. Basically, I quoted their statute. We put it in nice Cyrillic lettering instead of anglicized letters. Finbar Martin, love the name. Cops are threatening the free press with arrest despite the Supreme Court rejecting the proposition that institutional press has any constitutional privilege beyond that of other speakers. Okay. From the phrasing of your question, it sounds like you are addressing some of the auditor's issues that have come up, where police are not respecting that the press is more than the commercial press or the local commercial press. It's anybody. And yeah, look, I was a reporter, man. I was a reporter for 15 years. The reporter doesn't have any rights over what the average citizen does. All we have is time and familiarity. You get to know the people in positions, so they talk to you more readily than they'll talk to Billy Joe on the street. Yeah, and that's the truth. When we accessed information, we would go in and I'd pick up the public information. Matter of fact, I started reporting in Branson, Missouri, and that was my major when I was at SMS in Springfield. We would go and we'd pick up the daily log sheet, have all the incident reports at the police station and go through them. Now, at that time, they were using a little marker, like a little wax marker, to black out the information they didn't want you to have. It's kind of funny because all you had to do was hold the sheet up to the light that was coming through the window, and you'd be able to read through that little black wax marker. And we did that all the time too. So information is there, and a big part of how you get it and getting access is your approach and your attitude. Look, I'm sitting here wearing a t-shirt today. But if I showed up to get information, I wouldn't show up in, my ragged, holy ass jeans and, one of my old Metallica t-shirts. I'm going to show up to get that information in a polo and a pair of slacks, just because it's part of that approach. The comment by Finbar, interestingly, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco ruled that Crystal Cox, a blogger, is protected by the same free speech rights as a traditional journalist. Well, yeah, I don't see that as interesting. To me, that is just a fact. It's a reality. Journalism is not a protected class. It's not, law enforcement, your license. Anybody, you want to be a reporter, man, start a website, open it up tomorrow. That's why the internet has really turned standard news reporting on its head, because the limitations to entry used to be a lot of money in getting things printed. Setting up a printing plant. With the advent of the internet, man, you take away the barrel of ink. I mean, a barrel of ink is freaking expensive. A printing plant is expensive. Back before some assholes flew planes into a building in New York in 2001, I had a small publishing company, and we were in the process of buying a printing plant. I was about to spend $1 million on it. Those are not cheap. They're ungodly expensive, and you have to have it working. So is the powers that be and the local political structure, are they going to listen to somebody who can drop that kind of cash and own the printing plant? Yeah, they are. One of the problems we have with the internet is, one, quality. Two, the people that are reporting on the internet don't have the same level of professionalism as a lot of professional journalists. Meaning, you got to check your sources. You've got to get multiple sources and try to strip as much of the political point of view and the personal point of view out of your story. Do the facts. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. We are in a resurgence of yellow journalism. Look at the newspapers. Look at TV stations. Okay. I did my master's in mass communication. My bachelor's degree is in journalism. We're back to the yellow journalism of the late 1800s and on. You've got your left publications, you've got your right publications, and I'm including television stations and internet channels on that. So this is a resurgence of yellow journalism. Neither one of those is going to tell the actual truth. You've got to watch or read these articles and these stories and then discern what facts are important. And go look them up for yourself. Go to the primary sources. That's where we're at now. As far as citizen journalists, I don't even like that phrase, because that implies that you have to be a citizen to be a journalist. No, you don't. Anybody can. But how you approach a situation. I mean, I got into a lot of spaces and a lot of places as a reporter that I should not have been allowed into, merely because I acted like I belonged. I dressed appropriately, and I just walked in and acted like I belonged there, and people didn't question it. I got into crime scenes. I got into accident scenes. I walked up, talked to police officers, got the information I needed, walked away, and they never questioned it. Well, part of it is because you act like you should be there. I got into federal buildings and in secure federal places because you act like you should be there. Yeah, I'm not going to go any further on that. I'm not sure that some of those I'm pretty sure statute of limitations expired and all of that. But yeah, you can get access by your attitude, your approach, and how you carry yourself. And as a reporter, access is everything. If you're doing something that forecloses your access, you need to change or understand that you're not going to have good facts in that avenue. It's a completely different world, man. The cell phones we have now, and they're going to be, this whole quarantine thing, turning it back to the quarantine laws. Look, the violations of privacy that have occurred, are occurring, and are going to occur are scary. Your cell phone companies, Google, they're going to allow the government access to your tracking data. Okay. If you're using Google services, you've got Google tracking enabled on your phone. They already know who you are, where you are. They know what you're doing. They know how long you were there. And the government's going to have free access to that. So if you're violating the quarantine, man, they're going to be able to know that and follow it. I've actually won cases because we were able to show that my client's phone showed that they were somewhere that the prosecution said they weren't. Yes, you can ping the phone when it's off. And I'm reading Spinup's comment. Has DHSS stated if the dispensaries are on track? Since construction is essential, I would think that unless growers were closed as non-essential, hoping that's as non-essential. Construction is an essential business and it is allowed. Part of the problem, and it was one of the things I talked about during the run-up to the licensing submission, is if the licensees didn't have a contractor lined up or started construction before the application process, then they have a real hard time getting their build-outs complete. We only have so many licensed contractors in the state of Missouri. All of the development that has to be done is going to use up a lot of them. It's also using up a lot of the supplies. Okay, there's a crunch on that. Now, this situation that we've all been experiencing for the past several weeks actually helps with that because there's more manpower available. But it is extremely unlikely that everybody is on track. They have to get their build-outs done, get approved. They have to have all of their software in place. That includes all the seed-to-sale tracking systems. The cultivation facilities are largely run behind the 8 ball. If they're an indoor facility, if they're running a hydro facility, then you're talking about a 5 to 10 million project, and that is something that you are not building in that short of a time period unless you are spending a lot of money and you have that laid out. Rapid builds are not as common as people might think. That the licenses were approved in the middle of winter. Some people were able to start on lot clearing and development right away. They could get the dozers in. They could start prepping the ground for concrete, but not necessarily. So they're behind the 8 ball too. Now the outdoor grows, I don't know of any, but I'm sure there are some. They are probably in better shape than anybody else. But until they're approved with their final approval, they can't plant. So I don't know of any cultivation facility in the state of Missouri that has plants growing yet. You know as well as I do that you're looking at 90, a good 90 days, 90 to 120 days for a good cycle. So when we extrapolate that out, we're talking mid to late summer before there's going to be any actual medical on the market. That's if they're in the ground today. When we extrapolate that out, because I don't think there are any that are ready to go. It doesn't matter if the dispensary is ready. If the dispensary is ready and there's no medical available for the dispensary, then the dispensary just sits there and burns cash until the cultivation facilities are ready. So it's going to be tough. I think you're looking at September at the earliest before we're going to see anything out of any product in dispensaries. Very likely October is possible, which is not good. Doc said if you could find, go ahead and get. Even non-dispensary seem kind of odd. Your doctor's actually right legally. Legally, you as a patient with a patient ID card are authorized to possess up to 4 ounces. Okay. The law doesn't particularly care how you got that. And right now, there's no law saying that it had to come from a dispensary. It comes to what you have to have. So when you have your card, you have the right to possess up to 4 ounces. Now, please make sure you label it, get your name on it, throw a copy of your card in a plastic bag. If you're going to keep your weed in a plastic bag, put that plastic bag and a copy of your card in another plastic bag so that your medical card is there with it. Make it easy for the police officer to see that you have a patient ID card. Make it hard for him to screw with you. But yeah, you can possess medical marijuana now if you have a valid patient card, up to 4 ounces. I've done some videos on that. Please feel free to go back through and take a look at them. Let's see. Thomas, do you know anything about cops using something similar to becoming a temporary cell phone tower stingray to track texts and calls? And can I FOI the highway patrol about this? Well, that has been done. The technology is actually getting a lot more inexpensive. I know that that's been done around the Kansas City and the St. Louis areas. Out in the rural areas, I don't think it has been. At least I'm not aware of it. It cost-wise doesn't make a lot of sense. You can send a sunshine request to law enforcement or highway patrol at any time. Sunshine requests tend to be expensive. They will be evasive, but you certainly can. And Missouri Sunshine Law is Chapter 610, Revised State Code of Missouri. You can access that at revisor.mo.gov. And it'll have most of what you need to know to do that. Of course, Nitro has it. Because, look, Nitro doesn't give a shit about any of your constitutional rights, much less, your privacy or things like warrants. If they're using it and they do not have a valid warrant, then I think there's an avenue of attack. But, if we're going to talk about attacks and Fourth Amendment, it really, really is very case specific. And please don't put specifics of your case in the comments. If you have a question like that, talk to a defense attorney. You can talk to me, talk to somebody else, pay them a fee for their time. They're your attorney. They can't, get the attorney-client confidentiality going. Now, bear in mind, having access to something and actually possessing it are two different things. Do I think mandatory vaccination and chips are more of a conspiracy or a real thing? We have a long history of mandatory vaccination in the United States. That goes back and all the way, Massachusetts, 1900s, turn of the century. One of the first quarantine type cases, and it's actually the court case everybody points to justify what's going on now. Mandatory vaccination can be done. Mandatory vaccination can even override your religious objections to vaccination if the government expresses their goal and the narrow limitations appropriately. So first, they have to have a compelling interest in what they're wanting to do. Okay, they have to have a compelling government interest, and the action government wants to take has to be narrowly tailored to achieve that result. Which is why my comments about closing churches, they've been shutting down churches, but yet you can still go to Walmart You can still go to Hy-Vee. You can go to the grocery store. You can go to Schnucks, but you can't go to church. That's a problem because it's not narrowly tailored to achieve a compelling government interest because they're allowing this, but not that. In this case, the vaccinations, mandatory vaccinations, understand that by and large, if they issue a mandatory vaccination, 80% of the country is going to get it without question. They're not going to question it. 10 to 15% of the country will question it, they'll argue about it, and then they'll get it grudgingly. You're talking about the 5% or 5 to 10% that are going to argue and say, well, we're not going to get that. Depending on the state that they're in, they're going to have different levels of success with that. And I can't really talk about other states, but in Missouri, I think that they would lose. They would be vaccinated against their will, and they can take that up to court afterwards, but it'll happen in the meantime. As far as chips, that is a completely different story. There are influential people that are proposing the idea of chips and the fact that you'd have your vaccination records on them. I mean, look, that is how you get yellow stars. That's how you get the Jewish star tattooed to your fucking chest. Pardon my language. But if we're going to force you to carry a chip in your body, okay, it's over, guys. It's over. That chip will track you. It'll track everything you do. It'll track your spending. They'll expand it because the chip's there. Okay, remember your social security number? Not for identification purposes. You used to say that right on the social security card, not for identification purposes. Well, guess what? Anytime you want to do something, we need your social security number. Why? Because it's how they freaking identify you. So the chips, if they do try to push that, they're going to push it innocuously for one small little purpose, but then they'll expand on it and it'll grow and there'll be other purposes and they'll find something that you're going to want to have. Oh, well, if you have the chip, you don't have to go through the search line at the airport. Or if you have the chip, then you won't have to do this. Or, hippie, yeah, if you have the chip, it can key to your smart gun, so your smart gun can be active. And then if the police are having an interaction with you, they can have a broadcast code that will just shut down all the smart guns around them for their safety. Yeah, like that can't be spoofed. So I would not be in favor of that. Do I think it's a conspiracy or a real thing? Look, the chips are real things. I've seen them. I've read the stories about them. People have used implants for near-field communications. It's been being done for 15 years. If there was a push, it's going to come down to either they force you to take a chip, which isn't going to go over in America, or they provide enough of an impetus, enough benefits that you're going to want one. That's also possible too. But I think if they have the chips, yeah. Yes, my dog does have the chips. So do my cats. And those are near field communication. And if they go to the vet can scan over it and see who the owner is. They're generally for identification, but you can put other information on those chips too. If your dog has a medical condition, that can be placed on there. Other data can be put on the chips, and that's where we run into problems. Okay. First, whose data is that? Who controls that data? Second, do you have a right to erase that data or change that data? There's all kinds of problems inherent with that. We are not ready for that as a society. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory because there are people who are out there that are actively pushing for that to happen. So I can't say it's conspiracy theory, but as far as is any of that ready for implementation? No. And there have also been chips available for years for kids. Um, some have mentioned that it will go so far as money going to crypto and bank account and stored in chip and paid by scanning chip. Seems kind of far-fetched. And Bill Gates. Yeah, Bill Gates is one of the people pushing that. Look, here's the deal. I don't have a chip, obviously, but when we were still able to go into a McDonald's or something, I just tap my phone on it, pay and leave. So we already use them. It's not even a matter of money having to go to crypto for that. And if money does go to crypto, it isn't going to be Bitcoin. It's going to be something the U.S. government has total control over, which is probably going to happen anyway when we look at what's going on with the economy. They've dumped so much money into the economy, they have to be able to pull it out. This would give the government more control over the actual money pool. Right now, you have paper money everywhere. They can't control the paper money. You eliminate the paper money, and they can control the entirety of the money cycle and where cash is going and how it's going. There'll be a huge black market in unregistered chips at that point. But I don't think we're there. When we talk about that, we're starting to push into science fiction now. But yeah, your chip will be an identity chip. Oh, there might be a satellite network that will be able to track those chips. If you know of any company that might have a contract with NASA and putting up a global satellite network, yeah, that's a possibility. So, that it was also invited to the White House to talk about how to rekey our government. If you go down that rabbit hole, you can go all the way down that rabbit hole. Not to steal a phrase from Hap and Morph and use their channel's name in a less than nice way. But yeah, look, any technology can be used for negative. And make no mistake about it, any technology the government is forcing upon you isn't for your interest. It's for government's interest. So I would say I'd think about that. I'd think about that very carefully. And personally, I would oppose any requirement for chipping without some form of true protection for the individual. And I just don't know of one. I mean, we've got our computers, man. I use my computer. You ask me how it works, I can't tell you. You're going to have people that are the same thing with the chips. Since the early days of the Cold War, they could track their spies through a chip on the skull. Well, I'm going to have to give you the benefit of the doubt on that, Timothy. I just don't know. Could it be done? I suppose. But the early days of the Cold War, our tech level was rather low, and transmitters were rather large. Even at the end of the Cold War, I would question that. Now, a far more useful way to track from a distance, at least during the tail end of the Cold War, would have been through a radiation marker that would show up on radiation scanners, which were widely in place in the late 80s. So I don't know if a chip would be the most effective way back then. I don't think our tech level was at that point. But, I was a tanker in the Army, man. I was a CDAT, computerized dumbass tanker. So, but we were using tech, man. I mean, I could read a name tag on a soldier at 3,500 meters in the middle of the night. So maybe, but I just don't think we had transmitters that were that effective. If we had transmitters that were that good, we'd have had much better tech in our radio communications on the tanks. So that's why I think that probably isn't the case. But is it possible the CIA has more control than government branches? Of course. Yeah. Look, we set up an entire shadow government with FEMA, man. FEMA has the ability in a true nationwide emergency to take over every aspect of government. and divide the country into regions and set aside the whole state concept? Oh yeah, it's very possible. Now the CIA also has a mandate to only operate outside of the borders, so it's likely that the CIA has more control outside of the borders. If they're operating inside the borders, they're violating the law, and they could very well go to prison. So, I don't know. Is it possible? Of course, man. I mean, anything's possible when you're talking about black work by our government. I mean, is it possible that our government would sell drugs to the cartels and from the cartels on the streets in LA to fund buying guns from Iran to give to the Contras? Shit, man. If you'd asked that in the 80s, I probably would have said no. What the hell do we know? Timothy, historical information. Okay. Well, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. I'd like to take a look at that. Dallas, Texas county judge is implementing mandatory face masks when in any essential business. Do we have to follow his demands like the law? Well, not having read the order, I can't advise you on that. And I can't advise you on that also since I'm not licensed in the state of Texas. I would say a couple things. First, I would definitely take a very close look at that order and read it very closely. I would want to make sure that I understood exactly what the judge ordered and what his support and reasoning for it is. Because most orders like that aren't a county judge authority order. It would be a health services, Department of Health director, or a state Department of Health director, something along those lines, as opposed to coming out of county judge. Now, you're talking about Texas, and well, I mean, Texas has a long history of county judges, doing whatever the hell they want. So that is something that I would probably say I would talk to one of the local attorneys in Texas, or I would talk to a Texas civil rights attorney about and see what was going on with that. Because I'm not sure that would be valid. Now, could you very well wind up in jail while you're arguing it if you choose to disobey that order? Yeah, you could. And I would talk to an attorney before you chose civil disobedience, especially when jail time is a possibility. Bush Sr. got lucky on the Iran-Contra deal. Yeah, he did. He did. And don't pretend for a minute that Bush Sr. wasn't hip deep in it. The guy he worked for the CIA. He was heavily involved in CIA activities. Hell, he was on scene for the Kennedy assassination. Yeah, people forget that. There's a photo of him outside the building. So, yeah. That's a very good point. And North took the heat. Man, somebody's always going to take the heat, and it ain't going to be the guy in charge. What are my thoughts on the Roger Stone case? Okay, I'll bite. Roger Stone case. Oh, denied the retrial? Is that what you're getting at? Okay. I assume you're referencing the last development that I'm aware of is that he was denied retrial. That is not really surprising. The judge on appeal may or may not be overturned. Okay. You can always ask for a new trial for things. I've represented clients, and well, in fairness, I've only lost one jury trial, but we asked for a new trial for the following errors that we said the judge committed, and the judge said no because he didn't believe he made any errors. The trial judge will make that decision. Then on appeal, you're going to make that argument that trial judge should have granted the motion for new trial, and failing to do so was also an error. And you're going to make that argument on appeal. So that's really an appellate issue that Stone is doing, and that'll be an appellate case. Whether or not it's ever going to get there, no, I have no idea. Jury issues tend to be appellate cases. Trial judges tend not to overrule the jury very often. Stone wasn't exactly a model defendant through the process either. He was difficult. His attorneys, if his attorneys didn't have at least one afternoon of screaming at him, I'll be surprised. Because he needed somebody to yell at him, probably slap some smarts into him. Stone did a lot to hurt his case. Now, we're not talking about the merits of the case. We're just talking about his behavior, his speech, and his antics. So is there an issue on appeal? Maybe. I don't know all the details of the incident regarding the juror to be able to comment on that. But it would definitely be an appellate issue. And it's typical that you would make an argument to the trial judge, so you have to preserve it for the appeal. So you'd make an argument, you're not going to win. Case in point, there's a case I have that's coming up. We had a suppression issue, and it would have gone to trial, but courts are closed. So the trial's been continued until God knows when. But in that case, we made a suppression argument that I knew my judge was not going to accept. Okay. And we still had to make the argument so we could preserve the argument for the appeal. If you don't make the argument, you can't appeal the decision that the judge didn't make. So in this case, if we lose at trial, the appellate attorney, be that me or somebody else, will be able to argue the judge made a mistake in denying our motion to suppress. That mistake directly impacted the outcome of the case, and without the evidence that we asked to be suppressed, the jury could not have reached a verdict of guilty. So that's something you have to preserve, even when you know your argument is going to fall on deaf ears. Even when you know the judge is going to rule against you, you still have to make that argument. This is something that a lot of people don't like about lawyers. I think we're just running up the bill. We have to make that argument to preserve it for the appeal, where we'll have a better chance. Now, that doesn't mean that there's always going to be an appeal. Mr. Stone might decide not to appeal it. He might cut a deal with Trump for a commutation, or even a pardon when Trump is on his way out of office. So there are reasons why it may not be appealed. Or he just ran out of money and says, screw it, I'm just going to be done with it and move on. There are reasons why somebody might not appeal an issue that has a valid point of appeal. Clearly, we like some lawyers we are here. Well, I appreciate that. There aren't that many lawyers that are actually talking about what the process is like, because if you know how the sausage is made, you don't want to eat it. So yeah, that's that Stone case. It's kind of interesting. You can learn a lot from that. Everybody is brainwashed from Operation Mockingbird. The real deal is almost impossible to know. One of my avenues of research when I was working on my master's in mass communication was telecommunication in the electronic age, how media transfers to electronic age. And there's fantastic studies by George Gerbner. It was phenomenal. His cultivation studies and the cultivation theory that he espoused is something that you should read and understand. If you have an opportunity, go read about George Gerbner and the Mean World Syndrome. He discovered that when he was studying people that watched heavy amounts of television as composed to people that watched light amounts, and bear in mind, in the 60s, he didn't have a control group that didn't watch television because electronic media was that prevalent. But the people that consumed a greater amount of television had a starker view of the world. They thought the world was meaner than the people who watched less television. They thought the world was more violent. And the studies have been transposed into other areas as well. An Israeli researcher studied that in relation to sex. In that people who watched a lot of television believe that people were having more frequent and more kinky sex than people who watched less television, especially as compared to studies that actually track sexual behaviors. What that means is that television and electronic media cultivates a way of thinking in your head, and it cultivates not just what you think, but how you think. And in reality, how you think is shaped not by the answers to the questions that you get, but by how you phrase the questions you ask. When I was working as a reporter, I had an editor who was a diehard liberal. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm not. I am libertarian. And we would be seeking the same information, but his questions would be very, very different than mine. And that affects the answer. And that affects what you receive for information from the media, from ordinary conversation, not just how you phrase a question, but how people frame the questions that they're asked in their head before they answer. It's really fascinating. I have a couple questions here. What are your thoughts? Supposed gridlock protests for Monday in Kansas City? Well, I think that the fundamental right to protest is one of the most important things you can do. I don't like gridlock type protests because it interferes with my day, but isn't that really the point of the protest, to make people stop and pay attention? I think that you have an absolute right to protest, and by God, go for it. If I get pulled over for a traffic violation, do I have to answer, is this your current address? That is a great question, because that is the one time that my advice, which is typically shut the hell up, is different. If you are driving a vehicle and you are pulled over by law enforcement in the state of Missouri, I'm not going to talk about other states, in the state of Missouri, I believe in other states, you have to check there, but you are required to present your driver's license and advise them if this driver's license is correct. So they're looking at your driver's license, they're asking if that's your current address. Yes, you have to answer them. Now, if they're asking where you're going, that is a split of opinion, okay? While I don't think you need to be answering that question, the law does require that in certain circumstances, you do state your business for being about. So the way that I advise people to respond to that is with a question. Okay. Where are you going? Is there a reason you pulled me over, officer? Okay. Shift it back politely to the topic at hand, which is the reason he is detaining you and stopping you from being about your business. Where are you coming from? I'm sorry, officer, was there a reason you stopped me? Am I free to go? I'll bring it back with a question. Okay. You can sit there like a stone and say, I don't answer questions, pig. But that's not going to help you. That's not going to get you out of that situation. It's not going to defuse it and move you on your way. What it's going to do is it's going to create a contest of wills, and the police officer on the street is going to push it into a situation where he will be able to charge you with something. Okay? Don't push a contempt of cop situation that you don't need to. Now, answer the question with a question. Okay? Do you know how fast you were going? Well, what was the reason you pulled me over, officer? I appreciate that. I'm probably not the person you want for governor. Nothing would, well, maybe it is, because nothing would get done. I'd say no to most everything they want to do. But, I appreciate that. And, thanks for the thoughts. You know what? If they have no reason to pull you over, they'll make one. There's a lot to a pretextual stop. Wait, you don't know? Yeah, that's a response. I mean, look, if you don't know, I think we're both done here, right? There's a lot in a stop. A stop can be for a specific reason, or it can be a pretextual stop. But why does a police officer ask you the first thing they come up with, you know how fast you're going? Because almost any answer you give that question will incriminate you. No, I don't. Oh, so you're going as fast as I say you are. Or yes. Okay, great. So you know you were speeding. He admitted that he was speeding because the officer knows how fast he's going to accuse you of. If you say you know how fast you were going, the officer is going to interpret your statement as an admission of guilt. So yeah, you can't answer that question. And you probably shouldn't. Really, you probably shouldn't. So you respond to the question with a question. ID if lawful stop, not any stop. Don't answer if ID is current. It has to be by law. If it isn't current, you admit you just told on yourself. You know what? There are a number of reasons why your address could be incorrect. And right now, with DOR offices, license offices being closed, you can't fix that even if you wanted to. So if you moved after the DOR license office closed, anytime within the last month or so, and they want to write you a ticket for that not being current, go talk to a local attorney. If you're in my area, come talk to me, because that's a very winnable argument. Here's the problem in Missouri is that the stop will always be presumed to be lawful until it's proven to not be. Okay? And I understand your point, Thomas, and it's well taken, but Missouri does not have any allowance for resisting an unlawful arrest. Okay, you can't do that. So when you are detained by a police officer, even if they are in the wrong, you cannot legally resist. If you do, you can still be charged with resisting arrest, and you can be convicted for resisting an unlawful arrest in the state of Missouri. So you're skirting a fine line, and I don't know if I would skirt that line when it comes down to, presenting your ID. Look, if you're driving the car, you got to give them your license. That's the way it is. License, proof of insurance. Keep those things handy. Look, police officers will tell you in DWI training, one of the things they're looking for, it's a divided attention test. They're asking for your license and proof of insurance, and they're talking to you while you're getting it out because they want to see if you can do divided attention. Even though the human mind is not capable of dividing attention effectively. You can get something out via muscle memory, and your muscle memory will take over while you're focusing on something else. But yeah, keep your license somewhere else, somewhere handy. I have my license in my wallet. I got to try and pry the thing out from behind that little plastic screen. Okay. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. But I'm going to have to fumble with it, man. And hell, cop might think I'm drunk just because I'm fumbling my license. a lot of what you have heard and read on the internet is partially correct and partially wrong. It's where that line between correct and wrong is that gets people into trouble. Car cam, yeah, you got to have it. If you do not have a dash cam in your car, go get one. You can get them for under $100. Get it and install it. Have them in all of my cars. Would not drive a car without one. You know, whether you're talking about getting an accident, interaction with law enforcement, those cameras are invaluable. You can get them that will upload the video directly to the cloud so that they can't take the card out and lose it. Yeah, I definitely. There are also apps that you can set to record. There are iPhone apps where you can just say, you know, Siri, I'm being stopped by the police, and it will start recording. So those are phenomenal. Do it. Now, the flip side of that is, because I'm a lawyer, I have to talk about the liability side. If you have a dash cam and you have evidence, you cannot delete that evidence. So the evidence might show that you were at fault in the accident. You cannot delete that. That's destruction of evidence. So don't delete that, please. But, yeah. How many people look to see if there's a dash cam? My wife got into a car accident. She was broadsided, 7-8 weeks ago or something like that. Broadsided by a kid here in Kirksville. He ran a stop sign and hit the side of her minivan. It ticked me off. She's driving a Chrysler Pacifica hybrid. We both have electric cars. Hers is a plug-in hybrid. Mine is a Chevy Bolt, pure electric. So broadsided the van. And this kid's insurance company, the kid admitted liability. He admitted guilt when he for a ticket in court, paid his fine, and they were still trying to pass this off. And they were giving my wife a hard time about it. And she's like, "You realize that I work in a law firm, right?" And they're like, "Well, she's like, look, we have the dash cam video. Your guy ran a stop sign. He hit my car. That's it." So the dash cam video made a world of difference. And then they still fought with us over the repair value. That fight isn't yet done, but at least her car is fixed and back to her now. We'll be fighting about the reduction in value soon. But yeah, they even screwed lawyers, man. So your dash cam video can help you with an insurance company. Makes a world of difference. And I actually started my dash cam videos because I was looking at the number of miles people spend on the road and the likelihood of accidents. Obviously, the more miles you're driving, the higher likelihood of getting into a car accident you have, because you have greater exposure to that. So I started with the dash cam, and then I thought about the using that for windshield time for PTL. And the dash cam didn't work for that. But so I got another rig to hold my cell phone up, and so it's sitting up here right next to the mirror. And my wife's not happy about that. She thinks that's too much of a distraction. I don't know that it is. But yes, so your dash cam, get one. If you don't have one, get one. They can be gotten inexpensive on Amazon. We have them in each car. I would say I have one that only goes forward in my Bolt. If you can get one that has a rear-facing camera as well, either a rear-facing camera from the mount up here, they'll get the inside of the car and out the back window, or if you have one that'll mount in the back and can get behind the car, then do it. They're not that expensive, and they're well worth the expense. You can move them when you change cars. And hell, I've had a case where the dash cam actually made a world of difference on a criminal charge because it showed that the person's car was vandalized. But the dash cam video took a picture of the person that did the vandalism. And that was not my client. So, it cleared my guy, whereas, he may well have been faced with a decision to either take a plea or risk a trial. We were able to show that it wasn't him. So yeah, get it, and use them. Throw a big, heavy micro SD card in there. Get a 128 or 256. And then if you really want to have fun, because I did this with my Bolt. My Bolt had to go to the shop. There was a recall for something related to the battery. So we brought it up to the shop and dropped it off up in Iowa. But the dash cam runs every time the car started. So when the mechanic that was working on the car took it out for a test drive, I was listening to everything he was saying in my car while he was driving. And he was talking about this girl that was walking down the street making some, rather lewd comments to himself. We're listening to that going, oh my God, dude, you don't realize you're being recorded. And the camera is right there in plain sight. I mean, you can't miss it. Yeah. But we also were able to track when they said that, I drove it for a half hour. I'm like, no, I drove it for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's right. If you have the cam and it goes up into and does back up into the cloud, then your data will be there. You can get them that will operate on a Wi-Fi and they can upload to your cell phone. Your cell phone, when within range, it can connect to the camera and upload. Or if you park at your house and your Wi-Fi extends out to wherever you park, the cameras can link up to your Wi-Fi and upload then. Deleting the video is not a good thing. Then you can get hit with destruction of evidence. It's called spoliation. If it's in a civil case, the presumption going to the jury will be that you did it because that evidence was bad for you and would show that you were a mean, evil person at fault. In a criminal case, you could be charged. Do you need to give up the footage ASAP? Here's the deal. If you are in a court case with somebody, you don't give them shit until they ask for it. Okay? And then if they don't ask for it right, you don't give it to them. Okay, there's a discovery process. They have to send over discovery. If you intend to use it, your attorney may disclose it. But if they don't ask for it, it doesn't exist. And for the attorneys, if there are any attorneys, I'm opposite here. Look, if you're not asking for discovery, I'm not going to give it to you. And if I don't ask for discovery, you're not volunteering shit to me either. So that's the way the game's played. So yeah, if you can't destroy the footage, but you don't need to volunteer it. Now, if it's helping you, you're going to point out, and you're going to be you or your attorney is going to be screaming at heaven, going, "I've got the proof right here." If it doesn't help you, I don't know why you would tell them, "I've got the proof here that I'm at fault, man." You're not going to do that. You might negotiate the best case for your situation, but I don't think that you're going to be providing anybody proof that you're at fault. And for the love of God, if it's a criminal case, you can't destroy evidence. Don't destroy evidence. But, you don't think that, you don't think the bank robber, when the police ask him where he was, says, "Well, I am on the video at the gas station next door to the bank, taking off my mask." Don't volunteer that. Their humor is refreshing. It can also be very, very sad, sick, and twisted at times. Some of the things that we see and deal with, there can be a very definite gallows humor. Very similar to when I was in the Army. plates are expiring. Can you get ticketed for the inspection being expired? You can always be ticketed. Whether or not that ticket will stand is a separate issue. You have an argument that DOR has extended the registration guidelines. One of the registration guidelines is a valid motor vehicle inspection. I mean, it would be an arguable case. Like many situations, why be the test case? Inspection's $12. It'll take a little while. Go get it inspected. My opinion on First Amendment auditors, dude, I love them. I love them. I came up as a reporter. I spent 15 years working as a reporter, and we did First Amendment audits all the time. First Amendment auditing is such an important aspect of your constitutional rights that there should be somebody out there making sure that your rights are being protected. A right that is not used will be lost. Now, as for First Amendment auditors, when they're going out and they're doing their First Amendment auditing, okay, there are a couple of categories in that. And this is kind of some of the research I was doing. I consider there to be categories. You've got the reporting style and you've got the activism style. And the two are different. The reporting style is testing the First Amendment response by whatever entity that happens to be and reporting on it. Saying, okay, well, we asked, we filed a sunshine request for this. They didn't give it to us. They did this. They did this. We did sunshine requests on 10 towns. And we would do this when I was a reporter all the time, especially during Sunshine Week. Spring, every year, check MoPress Association, mopress.org. There's a lot of great information there. Missouri Press does a phenomenal job. And so does the Missouri Sunshine organization. So when you're out and you're doing this, you collect that information, do a report where they are. If you want to give them a grade, you assign points to the responses and score them. Just make sure you do it fairly, and you provide that information of what the scoring rubric is, so your readers can assess that you did it fairly. The reporting style of auditor I actually prefer because you're not going to change the cop on the beat's opinion or how he does his job. He's doing what he's been told to do, and you're not going to change that by screaming at him. It isn't going to happen. The getting arrested doesn't usually solve the problem. Really, when it comes right down to it, the threat of arrest is all you need. If you're looking to do and subdivide the activism side more, if you're looking to do judicial activism to where you go and they threaten you with arrest and then you sue the shit out of them, all you need is the threat of arrest. You don't actually have to have been arrested. If they say, if you don't leave here, I'm going to arrest you, that's all you need, man. That is a perfectly valid federal case. You're going to get paid. And you can make a lot of money doing that if they do it appropriately. Make sure you're in the right area. Okay. Understand the difference in signs and sayings. Okay. Fuck the police. Perfectly legal speech. That is fine. Fuck you, police. You're going to jail. Okay. Very fine line, but a very important one. Okay. One is freedom of speech, political speech. The other is disorderly conduct. So, yeah, God, of course, I don't know why anybody would not like First Amendment auditors. It's a very important thing. However, some of them are rude. Some of them are creepy. Some of them are just downright foul people. But that's any group of people. There are some that I really, really like. And I'm not going to get into naming names at this moment. There are some that I follow, and you can see if you go and you look at the channels that I'm subscribed to, you'll see some that I follow. That doesn't necessarily mean that I like all the ones that I follow. Some I follow simply because I want to see what kind of crazy shit they're getting into. For example, honor your oath in Florida. Excellent. Gray. The guy does a good job. Sometimes he gets closer to skirting the line than others as far as moving into more of a in-your-face activism, and that can be concerning, but you're not ever going to win the fight with the cop on the street. So don't. What up? If you do a Second Amendment audit, doesn't it pay to check city ordinances and some have their own laws? Or does Missouri constitutional carry Trump and doesn't matter? Okay, well, first, you always want to check the laws. Second, when you're talking about constitutional carry actually doesn't protect you as much as having a CCW in Missouri. Okay. With my CCW, and I have one, if I'm in a place where I'm not supposed to be carrying concealed, I have to be asked to leave. And then if I refuse to leave, I'm subject to a $100 fine. Okay. However, under the constitutional carry, if you're in one of the prohibited places, you actually can be charged. So the CCW protects you. Now, there's not a fine line on that. It's not a solid answer. So I'm going to say, check the local laws. If you're going to do a Second Amendment audit, be smart about it. Check all the laws. Make sure that you are in a place that you are legally allowed to be. Check the local ordinances. Make sure that you're not going to cross up a local ordinance. Now, not every local ordinance is going to be directly related to a firearm ordinance. Okay, if they're going to come after you, they're going to come after you for something. Okay, don't let them get you for a bullshit jaywalking ordinance when you're doing a Second Amendment audit. Make sure that you are protecting yourself. But yeah, you definitely want to check Missouri laws. If there's a conflict between a Missouri law and a local ordinance, figure it like this. The local ordinance can't overrule Missouri state law. It can be more restrictive, but it can't be, Missouri law will still trump if it's less restrictive. Let's see. Yes, look, I was CCW, and you don't want to, there's not really a benefit in walking around showing that you're armed in today's world. It's not going to stop because the people that are starting something aren't usually observant enough to pay attention to that. And yeah, when people can see you're armed, you're the first target. So hidden hand, man. Yeah, you're right. Definitely. I understand you don't like Kansas City. I guess I don't know that I can agree with you. It's a fine city and a lot of great people. A little too many people in one spot for me. I've lived in rural areas enough now that I've come to really like them. But look, there are a lot of good things about Kansas City, a lot of good things about St. Louis. Things you can't get anywhere else are in those cities. That's why we have them. So sorry you feel that way, but I'm kind of glad we have Kansas City, even if only for barbecue, man. Let's see. My wife is annoyed by them when I watch them getting paid from just you're going to be arrested. That's crazy. You know what? But the reason why, Hector, is when they're threatening you with arrest, what they've said is, if you continue to do your constitutionally protected activity, I'm going to arrest you. I'm going to take away your freedom. I'm going to lock your ass into a cage. I'm going to do that at gunpoint, because if you resist, we very well may shoot you. Okay? That is a serious, serious thing. And that's why that restriction on your liberty, that's exactly why we have that recompensation. You need to be compensated for what they're taking from you. They're taking that freedom from you. When I got back to South Dakota, I was never so happy to see my home state. South Dakota is an interesting place. I used to own a bar just across the border in Minnesota, right near Sisseton, South Dakota, literally right off the reservation. Fun place. Yes, yes. Social distancing. The rural areas have been doing it. There's actually a town in the state of Washington that has no cases of the illness, and they are isolated because they're just south of Vancouver, but to drive to another location in the United States, they have to drive through Canada, through 2 Border Patrol checkpoints, or they have to fly or take a boat. It's interesting. Yes, Sisseton and Browns Valley. Yep. I used to own a bar in Browns Valley, Minnesota. Burgeoning metropolis that was. Wow. Fieblen, okay. I know where that is. I don't think I've ever been there. But yeah, so you know, Springfield was an awesome town when it was still a town. I got into Springfield, Missouri in 1994. I got off a bus in Springfield, and it was a fun place. I was at the bus station waiting to catch the bus down to Branson, where I had family. And literally, I left my previous residence with just my duffel bag. And it is the girl I was working at the bus station is like, "You're going to get in trouble here." And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But so then I moved down, took the bus down to Branson, moved into Lampe, Missouri. They changed the sign and the population when I moved into town. It was that small. Yeah, really, really wild. Coming to Missouri was a trip. Springfield was fun. Yes, I have placed an order for the Cybertruck. We have 2 electric cars. We've got the Chevy Bolt and the Pacifica hybrid. It's a plug-in hybrid. I don't even know what gas costs, but I placed the order for the Cybertruck, and I actually decided we're going to start a little side channel. It's just going to detail out things about the Cybertruck, and when I get it, we'll film the truck, and I'll probably go get back into 4-wheeling some. And that's just, my Cybertruck. But yeah, I'm definitely ordered the Cybertruck. I have driven the X, I've driven the S. Frankly, I'm not sure that they were worth the money. But I like the supercharging. In the rural area, it's tough. Oh, okay. Yeah. Used to fish right outside Browns Valley, the little bridge, just to the west of town. at the south end of Lake Traverse. Yep. That's actually a pretty good lake. Now, when that flooded in 2006, man, it killed me. It was just a disaster. But yeah, the Tesla is awesome. I like Tesla, and I really thought before the Cybertruck was announced that the big three, GM, Ford, were going to be stepping up and pulling even with Tesla, but they're not even close. And it's, while they have manufacturing down much better, they're so far behind in terms of the electronics and the EV systems that there's no hope for them at this point. So yeah, I'll be buying a Tesla next, just because I want to be able to take advantage of the supercharging network. If we had DC fast charger within range, my Bolt would be good going back and forth to Kansas City or St. Louis. But there's only one DC fast charger within any kind of decent range. That's actually in Boonville at the Walmart. Yeah, Lampe's awesome. That concert venue is pretty cool. I didn't make a concert there. But I was working in Kimberling City most of the time that the concerts are going off. But yeah, it was a blast. Population like tripled for a day. The impression, the aesthetics of the Tesla, the Cybertruck is awesome. First, all of the Teslas are very well put together. Okay, then they're very well designed. I shouldn't say put together. Things are where they feel they should be when you're looking at them, and it works. And that's really Tesla's big thing, is it works. It's kind of like the Apple. Things work. You don't need to know why, and you don't care. It just works. So that's, they have problems with bodies, they have problems with other things, and Tesla has notoriously shitty customer service. But the Cybertruck, for me, my first impression of the Cybertruck is the body is reminiscent of all the sports cars, the supercars from my youth, the Lamborghini, that angular look was the futuristic look. The F-117. So yeah, I like that look. Then you get into tech and the specs on it, and it is a phenomenal vehicle. It does much better in every category, not than corresponding trucks. You can't compare the heavy-duty Cybertruck to an F-150. I don't think that's a fair comparison. But to a 3/4 ton, yeah, that's a fairly good comparison. And then the Cybertruck will fail. The load won't be as high as a 3/4 ton. It won't meet some of the same things. But I don't care about that. That's not the way I will use the vehicle. So that's not the issue for me. I need a pickup truck to haul wood for my wood shop because I make sawdust. So that's why I would use it. That's how I would use it. And it meets all the other things that I would want, and especially the range. So that was my take on the Cybertruck first thought. What did you not like about South Dakota? I lived across the border, man. I didn't spend enough time in South Dakota to develop a strong like or dislike for it. I mean, South Dakota was a little bit more open, lower population than even Minnesota or North Dakota. So it isn't even a matter of a specific like or dislike. It's just, I never even gave it that much consideration. cold. Well, look, that's the northern Midwest, man. The Dakotas, Minnesota. It's going to be cold. I was in the Army, cavalry. I was a 19 kilo, a M1 armor crewman. I was a loader, driver, gunner, and tank commander on an M1A1. Well, hey guys, we are running almost 2 hours, and that is insane. Any references back to the quarantine orders or the crazy judges or even Missouri's medical marijuana failures? I mean, roll out. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you watching. Please, if you haven't liked or subscribed, subscribe, and we'll be putting up another video around midweek, and we'll be back live every Saturday at 9 a.m. Well, I try to be a good lawyer. Thank you. The blocky look is interesting. I will be talking about that. I will ask that you, if you're interested in following anything on the Cybertruck, the channel that we are starting specifically for the Cybertruck is My Cybertruck. I will drop a link to it in the description later today. Feel free to subscribe. I will be talking about the Cybertruck there because I'm going to put it through its paces. We'll take it off road. We'll go do some fun with it when I get it. All right. Thank you all. You have a good day, and thanks for joining me. Where to find acceptable wording when applying for shared growth space? Okay, well, hold on for 1 second then. Yeah, look, if you're looking for a shared growth space, you have to understand that you're going to run afoul of the access rules, okay? Unless you're sharing with a caregiver, you're going to run afoul of the access. And the reason for that is you are limited. You can't have anyone other than you, the licensed person, in your grow space. So if your shared space is fenced off between the spaces, which seems to be self-defeating, you're going to run into that problem. So I'd be very, very careful about a shared space unless the person who is overall in charge of that space is a Missouri licensed caregiver and there's no more than 3 patients involved in that space. Oh, right on. Right on. When I was with a 3rd Cav, I was detailed out and I went to the field with the mortars. They needed bodies to help them. Spent the entire field problem breaking up the little cheese squares for the mortar so that it could, I'm not going to pretend to understand it, but it was fun. It got me out in the field and I didn't have to deal with crap in garrison. I was not good in garrison. But, all right. Thank you all. You have a good day. I appreciate it. And we'll be talking to you soon.